I'm sure you remember that last time we talked about design and the definition of the building. There are, of course, there are many different definitions, many different approaches, but we can say at least say that the spaces, living spaces for humans that we are supposed to create must have two major properties. The first one is they have to be functional, and the other part is about the artistic part or expressionist part, or we can say aesthetical part, all these spaces. And in my opinion, they need to be equal. If I just concentrate on the functionality part of these spaces, then it turns into an engineering job, and the other side is pure artistic. So it needs to be equal, it needs to include both of them. And for design, this is the least we can say, that it's a series of decisions in a process. We come up with a series of decisions in this process of design. And maybe, of course, it depends on people, it depends on time, but this can be a good way to organize this process. We can start with research and analysis. In this step, we collect lots of data. In the second step, we need to interpret all these data by combining different properties together, so that we can come up with pre-design decisions, so that we can constitute a solid foundation for the upcoming steps. And when we say research and analysis, this can be a list to guide us. We can examine the natural environment, the built environment, the social environment. Also, we need to examine our user groups along with other things. And once we finish this examination, once we collected all the data we need, we can start to think about it. We can start to interpret all these data so that we can come up with certain decisions that will guide us throughout the upcoming stages. And it is very important for us to do the analysis at the beginning, and it's very important for us to collect all the true information, all the necessary information, because we know that the building envelope will create an indoor space, and it will be surrounded by an outdoor space. And these two spaces, the outdoor environment and the indoor environment, they will be in relation. They will be in an interaction throughout the life of this building. And again, we talked about this previously earlier. We have 3 C's: concept, context, and content. But in the at the beginning of our work, we just have these two. We have context, that is the space, that is the environment that we are going to design our spaces in it. And we can talk about content. That's what is going to be in the inside environment of our living spaces, so that we can start with examining these two. And if we do a good examination, if we succeed, then we can come up with good ideas. And here we see the term concept. Concept means idea, a general thought, a basis for anything, the essence of something. And it's so normal that at the beginning we don't have any ideas because we just started. First, we need to understand what we are dealing with. And if we do a nice examination, a good analysis, we can come up with good ideas that will guide us throughout our journey. And as we talked about functionality and aesthetics, You can put any other term instead of these two, but when I say functionality, the main purpose of these living spaces that I'm talking about, and when I say aesthetics, I am talking about the artistic part or expressionist part or meaningful part of these spaces. So let's start with functionality. How can we come up with ideas that will provide us with a functional space? The basic function of a building is to provide a healthy and safe living environment. Let's say that during the design process, we are going to make decisions about the size of these spaces, the height, the width, and the length of these spaces, the lighting properties, or we need to create an indoor air temperature, or we can talk about a noise level in the indoor environment, the ventilation, the air movement, and the positions of the furniture, the space organization. And if we are careful, we can make meaningful decisions that will end up with a very functional living environment. But if we are not careful enough, if we don't follow a nice process, then these will be random, and at the end there is a high probability that our users may experience some problems because of these wrong aspects. They can either be happy or they can have they can experience some certain important problems. These can be psychological issues, these can be health issues, physiological issues, and it all depends on the end result of our decisions. And here we need to consider the environmental factors if we want to create a space that is suitable for our users. If we want to make our users happy, we need to first consider the environmental factors. Not limited with this list, but main items: sun, precipitation, air temperature, wind, prevailing wind properties, climate properties, the living entities, greenery, and the built environment that has been built by people, traffic, other buildings, any structure. This is what is in the outer environment of our design. And in the indoor environment, there is our user, and we need to consider their biological properties, their psychological properties, and the sociological properties, so we can find their needs. And this is what we need to do. We need to combine these two groups of analyzers together to come up with nice decisions about the space properties. Let's say that our user is sick and they are coughing, and in time there is this air pollution building up in the indoor environment. If we, as the architect, if we consider the environmental properties, and if we created a space that lets the air in and lets the polluted air out, then it will be a nice design. It will be a good decision. And all this property, all this scenario can be created based on our decision about this wall. What kind of a wall should it be? What kind of a window or wall opening should we create, and how we can decide it? If we consider the prevailing wind direction along the year, and if we analyze our user and determine what their needs are, then we can combine these two properties and come up with a logical decision about the position, the size, the direction of this window. And let's say that someone is asking us what is the idea behind the decision? Where does this idea come from? Is it meaningful? We can decide that if our decisions are good or bad, if our decisions will end up with a nice space or not, according to the answers of these questions. What is the idea behind the decision? I decided that I should locate a window here on this wall at this height, at this width, and it can be opened like this. And I can say that what is the idea behind this decision? The idea behind this decision is to let the air in, let the clean air in, so that we can have a nice air ventilation in indoor space. Where does this idea come from? This idea came from the needs of my user. My user will have certain activities in here, and at the end of these activities, there may be an air pollution, and his principal need is to get rid of pollutants, to live in a healthy air environment. And is it meaningful? Yes, it is meaningful. This is basically what we are doing, collecting data about the environment, about the context, collecting data about the user, about the content, so that we can combine all these and make up meaningful decisions that will help us to create nice living spaces. When I say nice living spaces, I am talking about the first part of our responsibilities, creating a functional building, which we can say it is equal to a healthy and safe living environment. But how about aesthetics? How about the other part? Comparably, the first part is easier, in my opinion, because it is more related to engineering, it is more related to physics and certain facts. These facts does not change according to views. They don't change. They don't change from people to people, but we cannot say the same for aesthetics, for artistic values. How can we come up with good decisions in order to create a nice aesthetical living space and with a higher quality, let's say. And maybe it is better to talk about examine this issue over certain examples. And here is one of the images that I like very much. When we look at this, we can say that the designer, the creator, has combined two different things in a very meaningful result. And when you see an image like this, or when you see an organization like this, you find it very meaningful. You find it very nice, and it makes sense. But we cannot say the same thing for this example. It is the important thing is to have meaningful answers for these questions. What is the idea behind this decision? Where does this idea come from? Is it meaningful? In short, we can just ask why. If the designer can have a meaningful answer for these questions, or just this why question, then we can say that it is a nice design, or it is a meaningful design. Here we can talk about the notion of the concept, and in my opinion, it is very it can be easier to recognize this idea, especially in certain commercials. Here, I want to show you two different examples. In fact, three different examples, but I'm not sure if YouTube will let me to include these commercials in the video because of the permission thing. If you cannot see it, I will put the link in the chat, in the description box, so you can watch it on your own.
Binlerce canlının yuvası olan kampüste bir gün daha sona eriyor. Not arısı. Sıklıkla görüldüğü kütüphanede bilgi toplamakla meşgul. Finallerin yaklaşmasıyla başlayan beyin fırtınalarında gözden kaçan bir konu bile bu çalışkan arı için felaket demek. Yetişkin bir not arısı vize konuları da finallere dahil olduğunda ders ağırlığının 2 katı kadar not çıkarabilir. Not arısının bu özelliği acımasız avcılara karşı ona büyük bir avantaj sağlıyor.
You may wonder that how this commercial is related to architecture or the subject that we are talking about. I believe that if we can come up during the architectural design process, after we completed our analysis, if we can come up with an idea, a basic thought for our design, this thought can guide us throughout our journey, and we can just be in the same way that just we decided the functionality aspects, we can come up with nice ideas and nice decisions in order to provide an aesthetical value for our design. I think this commercial here can be a good brain teaser. Let's say that you are the director of this commercial and you need to come up at the beginning of the shoot, you need to come up with certain decisions for this commercial. Let's say that you need to decide about the costume of the player, actress. And here in this video, it's in Turkish, but the commercial is about bees, and the main idea is to resemble a natural wildlife environment to the campus environment, campus living of students, university students. So in this series, it's a series. In this episode, they are talking about bees, and when we look at the headband of the actress, we see a striped bandana, yellow and black, and
Lan kampüste bir gün daha sona eriyor. Not arısı. Sıklıkla görüldüğü kütüphanede bilgi toplamakla meşgul.
And we know that bees are very hardworking insects like ants, and this is a hardworking student, and he's collecting information in the library.
Finallerin yaklaşmasıyla başlayan beyin fırtınalarında gözden kaçan bir konu bile bu çalışkan arı için felaket demek.
And also, here we can say that her glasses are like the big eyes of those insects.
Beyin fırtınalarında bu çalışkan arı için felaket demek. Yetişkin bir not arısı vize konuları da finallere dahil olduğunda ders ağırlığının
And this is very nice. When you look closely, you can see that all these organizations, they resemble like flowers, and she's collecting lecture notes from these flowers.
2 katı kadar not çıkarabilir.
And when you have this idea, it will be a bit easier for you to come up with these decisions about the costume of the actress, about the scene organization, or at the end, you need to combine all these ideas with the product itself. So how can you do that?
Not arısının bu
here we
özelliği
see the
acımasız avcılara karşı
and she is using her notes as a shield to protect her biscuit. This is one of the examples, and I like the other one as well. This is another episode of the same commercial.
Fakülte flamingoları. Bu canlılar kampüs düzlüklerinde fön rüzgarları estirmesiyle biliniyor. Ön kameralara yoğun ilgi gösteren bu flamingolar tek bir sözcükle bile anlaşabilirler. Sürü halinde gezen bu familya paylaşmaya dayalı bir yaşam şeklini benimser. Fakat o da ne? Sürüde bir ayrılık yaşanıyor. Neyse ki gıybet
It is very intelligent as well. Like the other episode, you are supposed to decide about the costumes, and once you have that idea, that those birds, once you resemble them, or once you take the idea of those birds as your concept, then it will be easier for you to come up with these decisions. The costumes of the actresses, they are going to be pink, and look here.
Ön kameralara
Look how they are standing, just like flamingos.
yoğun ilgi gösteren sürü halinde gezen bu familya
This group of birds, they are very prone to sharing. They like sharing, and
paylaşmaya dayalı
they share everything, the glasses they have and other items.
bir yaşam şeklini benimser. Fakat o da ne? Sürüde bir
When it comes to the biscuit, they don't want to share it. And this is the last one I want to show you. It is one of my favorites. It's a commercial about Nike shoes, or Nike, they call it, I don't know. It's Nike Air Max 2017, and throughout the commercial, and it's almost half minute long, we see the actual shoe only for 4 times in very short seconds, milliseconds probably, and let's examine the commercial like we did with the other two. You need to decide about the colors, and if you have a concept like air, and when we say air, we can say that those shoes are very light. Those shoes are like air. You don't feel them on your feet. You feel like you are walking on air. So this is your concept, and you need to decide about the colors. What kind of colors do you prefer? You don't go for blacks or reds or purples. You go for soft colors like baby blue or like baby pinks. And for the shapes, it's like the basic design exercise that we did in our first year. For the shapes, you are looking for very elastic, very curvative shapes. You don't go for sharp angles, needle-like shapes, or rough edges. You look for the softest shapes that you can find. And the best way to resemble air is air itself. Throughout the commercial, we just see a shape, an emptiness shaped like the shoe. And it's always the emptiness and something floating in the air. It's either the cloth, a very soft cloth, it's either some dust particles or some squishy objects that they jiggle. And I think this is a very nice design. But it all depends on the main idea. If you have this air idea, and if you decided to select it as your concept, then you can build all of your decisions over this concept, over this main idea. If you want to decide the colors, then here you are. It shows you where to go or how to proceed. If you want to decide about the form, then the same again. Just clothes again, round shapes, balloons, things like that. And it is very nice and it is very catching. Now I want to show you another example, this time from architecture. This is one of my favorite designs. It is called Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It's been constructed in Washington, D.C. And it was a competition for the American soldiers who died in Vietnam War. They wanted to create a veterans memorial, and they opened a competition in 1982. And Maya Lin, she won this competition. She was the first, the winner, and she was just a school student back then, a fourth grade architecture student, and it was not just a competition for students. And this is the area that they gave as the context. Here is the location of the design. All this area, it's a very nice parking area with lots of natural environment, items like trees and other stuff. And when we say Veterans Memorial, we are very used to see images like this. A soldier carrying his dead or wounded friend, or we can say, we are very used to see designs, monuments like this, and it is huge. It's very high, and we can just compare its height with these trees, and these are people. When you visit this monument, you feel like you are minuscule. You feel like you are like an insect, and you feel the pressure of this magnificence. And when we see these designs, we feel touched. We feel the magnificence, the they are majestic and they are very impressive. And the creators of these designs are absolutely looking for these feelings. However, Maya Lin's design was this. And she was this was the perspective she drew, and this was her poster she sent to the competition. We see it's a very minimalist expression, both the design itself and the poster. We see three drawings, we can say. A perspective, something like a section, and there is this text, the explanation of her design. And this is its actual, one of its actual photographs. Once it was constructed, we see it like this. And when we examine her design, we see that she designed 4 things in this area. She created 2 ramps, and as you can see, there is a topographical level difference. a natural level difference in this area, and it is surrounded by trees. And when you have a section through here, you will, originally it was something like this, with a nice slope. And after her design, she just did this. And in order to support all the earth here, she created two retaining walls alongside the two ramps she created. When you start from here, you slowly descend down through this ramp. It's a path that you can walk, and next to you, right next to you, a wall, a retaining wall starts to appear, and it increases. Its height, it starts to increase, and at this point, when you are at this corner, that's the lowest level for you in the ramp, and the highest level for the wall. It's about 3.1 meters. And if you continue to walk, this time you start to raise up with the slope, and you finish the ramp. And again, here you see the wall, but this time it gets smaller and smaller next to you, and it's a part of a walking path. And above it, you see earth, and right next to you on your right, you see this grass area. It's like this. And this is all her design, just two ramps, just two walls. Another view, here we can see the road network. It is connected. We are getting a little closer to the wall. This is the highest point, and this is a shoot from a Memorial Day. And when we get real close to the wall, we see that it is being covered with a special natural stone that is called gabbro, and it has been transported from Italy back then. This is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a type of marble, but not like the marble that we are used to see. It doesn't have any veins. It's just pitch black, and it can have a very nice polish over it. And once they covered these walls, they put the names of people that have been killed in that war, and it says that there are the names of 58,000 men and women who gave their lives or remain missing. And this was particularly chosen by her, and we can say that these are all her design decisions, because the idea was to create an image of the visitors overlapping with the names of the soldiers. And it is very touching, but in a very different way. And when we say that, why the among all other applicants, why the jury decided this project should win the prize, we can say that all these organizations, architectural organizations, the design, it has been constructed, or it has been straighted over a very strong foundation, which we call concept. First of all, she come up with these ideas, and then did her design over these ideas, based on these ideas. First of all, she didn't want to raise from the ground towards up, because she didn't want to block the view of this nice green area. Also, she wanted to it was important for her that the visitors need to be close to Earth. We can say that the visitors are kind of respectfully going inside the Earth, where the dead soldiers are buried. And maybe they can feel like they are visiting their graves, and they are descending down, bowing in front of the respectful memory of those soldiers. And why this Gavros stone? Because it can be polished. It's pitch black, so it doesn't have any veins or texture, so that you can easily see the names of these soldiers. And once your image is being reflected over their names, you will be united. And because even if her design is very simple, very minimalistic in terms of form and color and other aesthetical properties, because these these organizations are based on such powerful conceptual background, her design was chosen. And one of my friends, he told me that he's not sure about this, neither am I, and we didn't find any resource that says this can be true. But he told me that, his name is Gencay Çubuk, he told me that I am suspecting that when Maya Lin was working on her desk for this design, there was something that has been created by Lucio Fontana right next to her. And Lucio Fontana is an Italian painter, sculptor, and theorist. He was the creator of the movement that we call specialism. And because she says that this is a wound that is healing. And this is one of Lucio Fontana's designs, creations. This is what he do. And when you look at them, you can say that maybe Maya Lin was inspired by him. But we cannot say that she copied. She just gets some inspiration. And these designs, they are not the same, but they can have a shared idea in that. And another example, this is one of the German pavilions designed for World Fair in 1937 by Albert Speer. And when we look at this design, it says it says something very strong, very magnificent, very monumental, and you feel the power of German state, Nazi state. These columns, these narrow gaps between them, and the eagle on top, and all these layers here. We feel the strongness, we feel the magnificence, we feel the fear, maybe. And this is another pavilion of Republic of Germany this time, for another world exposition, World Fair. But now it is 1958, and here we see the name of the architect. The design is completely different. This time, instead of raising up towards the sky, we see horizontal lines. Instead of very solid stone columns that look like soldiers that carry something, we see glass facades. And you cannot, you fear to enter, or you fear to approach to this monument, but this here says the opposite. Come, I want to embrace you. You can easily come to me, and you can easily visit me. There's nothing to fear. It's humble. It is. We can say that it is the opposite. And when we ask ourselves, what was the main motive that forced the architects to decide these forms, these shapes, transparency. We can say that the two opposite worldviews, right before the Second World War and right after it. This is the exact opposite of this design. And when I say this here, I mean the concept, the idea behind these decisions. We can ask ourselves these questions throughout our journey, throughout our design process. What is the purpose here? Could it be to create something different, something unusual, something unexpected? Once we start to talk about these examples, many people say that these examples are very unusual, very different, very outstanding. Could it be just our goal to create something different? Can we say that is enough as a goal? Is it true that unusual and different means or equals to meaningful? Which one is more important, to be different or to be meaningful? In my opinion, these examples are good examples, not because they are different, but they are meaningful. And it's not, once you have that idea, once you start to think about it, you will see that it's not something to find, it's not something very hard to find. You can find it easily. It's right in front of you. It's right in there. And when I say right in there, I mean that here, it is all these decisions, they can be found by a good analysis. You need to analyze the environment, the context. You need to analyze the content. If you do this analyze in a nice way, you collect all the data, and if you can be able to look these data from different perspectives, you will find that idea easily. It's in there, and it is not very hard to find, but you need to know how to look it. Okay, yeah. Maybe with these pictures, it can be easy for us to understand. This is one of the table organizations of one of our former students. She used to share these photos in her Instagram page, and I like them very much. And when we say that it's a very nice design, in color-wise, in organization-wise, in shapes, in according to their shapes. And this is one of, again, her table designs, but this time totally different. But when you see something like this, this was an image that I saw several years ago on a web page, and I just clipped these pictures. You can say that these are unusual, these are different, but they don't make any sense. Here we see that like this image here, this coffee shop, they took health and sport as their concept, and they decided that why don't we serve our food on actual tennis rackets? But when you see something that like this, you feel like it is different, it is unusual, but it doesn't have any meaning. It's meaningless. You can say that, you cannot say that it's a nice idea. These two different things, they don't merge. You are not supposed to use a tennis racket as a serving table, or we can multiply these examples, and many of you, I'm sure, you are laughing right now, but please consider that some people thought that this was a nice idea. and they spend some money to buy these items, and they spend some time to wrap these food in these items, and they took the photos and they share. And it doesn't change if you just go with a different color style or with different in a different style. It is the same. It is still meaningless. We can give other examples from architecture. Some architect thought that this is a nice idea. They spent hours for drawing this building. Many people, many engineers, workers spent hours to construct this building, and they spent lots of money. And make sure that they think it is a very nice idea. As you can notice easily, there is a problem with the balconies here. The balconies look like they are about to fall. And this is another example that I find on a newspaper. It says here that this building is situated in one of the provinces of Hatay. It's a city in Turkey. And the name of the province is Kırıkhan. Kırık means broken in Turkish. So the architects took this as a concept, and they thought that it will be a very nice touch to design the balconies as if they are broken. Yeah, this here, those questions. Is it different? Yes. Is it unusual? Yes. Is it meaningful? No. Where did this idea come from? And why? What was the purpose? Is it meaningful? Is it different? Here is a TED Talk, a part of the TED Talk of Ole Sheeran, and he is going to explain how they designed one of their buildings. I think we can watch it together. If I don't forget, I will give the link for the actual TED Talk. So I advise you to watch the whole talk.
For much of the past century, architecture was under the...
Okay, I will open it with subtitles. I forget that. I thought it had subtitles. Yeah, here. Oh. Sorry about this. Okay, this one.
For much of the past century, architecture was under the spell of a famous doctrine. Form follows function had become modernity's ambitious manifesto and detrimental straight.
I'm sure that all of you knew that at the beginning of the 19th century, at around 1930s, a movement we call modernism, we see that movement, and one of its leading actors was Le Corbusier, and this was their famous doctrine: form follows function. And when we say form follows function, we mean that, or they used to mean that, if you want to decide or if you want to come up with decisions about the form of your design, like the shape, like the color, like the texture, like the transparency, or on any other thing, you need to consider the functionality first. If if something has a function, then it is a right choice. If something doesn't have a function, then it's nonsense. And when they asked Le Corbusier what was his favorite design, he said that my favorite design was the engine of an airplane.
Jacket, as it liberated architecture from the decorative, but condemned it to utilitarian rigor and restrained purpose. Of course, architecture.
And it's also, it will be nice to remind you that right before this period, we see industrialization, and people started to produce stuff in factories in huge numbers. And if you want to create a system like this, you need to be functional. There is no room for decorative ideas. And right before this period, we see that many architects used to create buildings like the background of a theater scene. We see lots of examples that they designed steel structure buildings and then they cover it with stones, actual stones, to because they wanted their design to look like old stone buildings. So they covered the steel structure with lots of other decorative ideas.
Architecture is about function, but I want to remember a rewriting of this phrase. Form follows function had become modernity's ambitious manifesto and detrimental straitjacket, as it liberated architecture from the decorative, but condemned it to utilitarian rigor and restrained purpose. Of course, architecture is about function, but I want to remember a rewriting of this phrase by Bernard Tschumi, and I want to propose a completely different quality. If form follows fiction, we could think of architecture and buildings as a space of stories, stories of the people that live there, of the people that work in these buildings. And we could start to imagine the experiences our buildings create. In this sense, I'm interested in fiction not as the implausible, but as the real, as the reality of what architecture means for the people that live in it and with it. Our buildings are prototypes, ideas for how the space of living or how the space of working could be different, and how a space of culture or a space of media could look like today. Our buildings are real, they're being built, they're an explicit engagement in physical reality and conceptual possibility. I think of our architecture as organizational structures. At their core is indeed structural thinking, like a system. How can we arrange things in both a functional and experiential way? How can we create structures that generate a series of relationships and narratives? And how can fictive stories of the inhabitants and users of our buildings script the architecture, while the architecture scripts those stories at the same time? And here comes the...
This is another expression of Winston Churchill's famous phrase. First, we create our living spaces, and then our living spaces creates us. Or first we organize our living spaces, and then our living spaces organize our lives. Something like that.
The second term into play, what I call narrative hybrids. Structures of multiple simultaneous stories that unfold throughout the buildings we create. So we could think of architecture as complex systems of relationships, both on a programmatic and functional way, and in an experiential and emotive or social way.
Here,
this is the
all these expressions, all these statements that he is been talking about, this is what I wanted to express myself when I say functionality and aesthetical values or aesthetical aspects.
Headquarters for China's national broadcaster, which I designed together with Rem Koolhaas at OMA. When I first arrived in Beijing in 2002, the city planners showed us this image. A forest of several hundred skyscrapers to emerge in the central business district, except at that time only a handful of them existed. So we had to design in a context that we knew almost nothing about, except one thing: it would all be about verticality. Of course, the skyscraper is vertical. It's a profoundly hierarchical structure. The top always the best, the bottom the worst, and the taller you are, the better, so it seems. And we wanted to ask ourselves, could a building be about a completely different quality?
We see the same structure here. First, they did an analysis about the context, about the function, the content, and then they started to think about it, about the data that they collected. Could a building be about a completely different quality? Does it always have to be like this? When you are talking about a skyscraper, it's all about verticality, and the top is always the best, the bottom is always the worst. And if you need to decide where the general manager's room will be, you have just one answer. It will be on top. It will because you have to give the best view to the general manager, and the general manager must have must be at the top of everything because of that hierarchy. And if you want to decide about the rooms for cleaning people, cleaners, then you have your answer again. It will be in the bottom because of the hierarchy, because of the opportunities. And he says that we started to think about it. Does it have to be like this, in this way?
Could it undo this hierarchy? And could it be about a system that is more about collaboration rather than isolation? So we took.
And when you place the general manager's office up and the cleaner guys' locker rooms in the bottom, you create an isolation. There are limits between floors that certain people cannot pass. And he says that we started to look for collaboration rather than isolation.
This needle and system that is more about collaboration rather than isolation. So we took this needle and bent it back into itself, into a loop of interconnected activities.
This is a very nice way to express the concept here in this graphical expression, representation.
The idea was to bring all aspects of television making into one single structure: news, program production.
There we go. We started to understand how they come up with this idea for this form. Why they decided that their building should have a form like this. You may not like the building. You may not find it very interesting. This may be a place for you, a place that you don't want to live in. That's okay. It's about your likes and dislikes. But I think everyone can say that this form was, they found this form, they decided this form over a meaningful idea. A very meaningful idea that has come from the function and the content and the context of that area. So this is a very nice way to structure our design process. We can use the similar method. If we make a nice, a very successful, a very good analysis, if you collect all the data about the content and the context, and in the second step, if we can manage to interpret these data by combining different values, different properties to each other, and look them from different perspectives, from different world views or viewing angles, viewing points, then we can come up with a nice idea that can guide us throughout our journey, just like they did.
Broadcasting, research and training, administration, all into a circuit of interconnected activities where people would meet in a process of exchange.
They come up with the idea of loop. They wanted that the collaboration notion can be the base for their every decision. So based on these, they started to look for combinations, different combining activities for different spaces in this building.
Collaboration. I still very much like this image. It reminds of biology classes, if you remember the human body with all its organs and circulatory systems, like at school. And suddenly you think of architecture no longer as built substance, but as an organism, as a life form. And as you start to dissect this organism, you can identify a series of primary technical clusters: program production, broadcasting center.
I believe that all these are different spaces that make up this building. Some programming studios, some social spaces, some meeting rooms, storage rooms, any other things.
And news. Those are tightly intertwined with social clusters, meeting rooms.
We can see that these spaces are distributed among the building, among this form. Some of them are in the top, some parts of these spaces are in the bottom, and they are all connected to each other. So that you can provide nearly equal things for everyone in this building. Everyone can get a good view. Everyone can be placed at the worst part of the building, the bottom part, and they are all connected to each other.
Canteens, chat areas, informal spaces for people to meet and exchange. So the organizational structure of this building was a hybrid between the technical and the social, the human and the performative. And of course, we used the loop of the building as a circulatory system to thread everything together and to allow both visitors and staff to...
With a circulation design, both in the vertical and horizontal directions, they combined all these spaces together.
Experience all these different functions in a great unity. With 473,000 square meters, it is one of the largest buildings ever built in the world. It has a population of over 10,000 people, and of course...
These numbers are huge. This building can include 10,000 people at once, and it has nearly 500,000 square meters.
This is a scale that exceeds the comprehension of many things and the scale of typical architecture. So we stopped work for a while and sat down and cut 10,000 little sticks and glued them onto a model, just simply to confront ourselves with what that quantity actually meant. But of course, it's not a number, it is the people, it is a community that inhabits the building. And in order to both comprehend this, but also script this architecture, we identified 5 characters, hypothetical.
And I think this is a very, very nice idea. They created 5 characters who will be the users of this building, and they try to see their design through their eyes, and they let these characters, these hypothetical characters, to walk around the building according to their daily lives.
Characters, and we followed them throughout their day in a life in this building, thought of where they would meet, what they would experience. So it was a way to script and design the building, but of course also to communicate its experiences. And this was part of an exhibition with the Museum of Modern Art in both New York and Beijing. This is the main broadcast control room, a technical installation so large it can broadcast over 200 channels simultaneously. And this is how the building stands in Beijing today. Its first broadcast live, the London Olympics 2012, after it had been completed from the outside for the Beijing Olympics. And you can see at the very tip of this 75-meter cantilever, those 3 little circles, and they're indeed part of a public loop that goes through the building, and they're a piece of glass that you can stand on and watch the city pass by below you in slow motion. The building has become part of everyday life in Beijing. It is there. It has also become a very popular backdrop for wedding photography. But its most important moment is maybe still this one. That's Beijing is similar to Time Out, a magazine that broadcasts what is happening in town during the week. And suddenly you see the building portrayed no longer as physical matter, but actually as an urban actor, as part of a series of personas that define the life of the city. So
I think this is a very touching story.
architecture suddenly assumes the quality of a player, of something that writes stories and performs stories. And I think that could be one of its primary meanings that we believe in.
And in our project studios, we start with writing a scenario. And when we say a scenario, most of the students think it like a movie script or something. It's not. In my opinion, a scenario can be created in order to guide us throughout our design process, and in order to let us find good ideas. That can be the best thing that we do, and this is what I believe. This can be a very nice approach for the design process. First, we start by collecting data about content and context, and then we start to get to understand them in a deeper way. After that, we can find certain paths, certain combinations between these collected data, so that we can find our meaningful idea, and we can use this throughout our design process. That will be our concept. And here is another video that has a very impressive idea, and I think this is very similar to the profession of architecture, because when we say what is the good architecture, how can we define the good architecture, many people can say that it's about form, to create different shapes, to have unusual designs or organizations, but is it so? Here is something. Another example. These are all doctors who are graduated from medical school, and they applied to continue with their education to be a surgeon. And as you know, the surgeons are maybe the most that is the most difficult part of medical profession, and they applied for this education, and the school, I mean the hospital, they are going to have an exam for these applicants, so that they will be able to choose the talented ones. And it is very similar with our country. We have an exam like that. Once you finish the medical school, after 6 years, you took this exam, you take this exam, and if you can get enough points, then you can be accepted to have your further education to become a surgeon. And in this exam, we see a test. They ask some questions, and they give you 5 choices. The important thing for you to circle the right choice, and they are mainly about the properties of human body, the properties of medicine, drugs, or diseases. Let's see how this Japanese hospital do their test.
倉敷中央病院では今年度から実技試験を導入することにいたしました。
ユニークな病院だとは聞いてたんですけど、
何が起こるんだろうと思って。
最初のミッションはこれです。
Yeah, they do a test, a 3-step test. In the first step, they wanted the applicants to fold an origami of
こういうテストだと思ってなかったんですけど、やばいって思いました。
a tiny square paper, just 5mm to 5mm, and you will know that if you are interested with the origami, you will know that the smaller the paper, the harder to fold.
卓上のライトをつけてください。始めてください。
And they have a limited time, just 15 minutes. They need to fall through
それは
cranes.
折っていけばいくほどに難しくなってきてしまって
It
思
is
ったより
very
紙が
hard
厚くてなかなか折れなくてこれじゃ一点にもならないなと思って
paper.
5分前です。
And we can say, you see that it's a very stressful environment. There is this
4、
countdown.
3、2、1。手を
The
止め
light
てください。
starts to turn red.
次の課題はこれです。
In the second step, they were given a bug, a distributed bug with separated parts like legs and wings and head, and they were given a scheme, and all the applicants are asked to combine the bug to its original form by gluing these particles according to that scheme.
始めてください。
Again, in
作
15
戦を
minutes.
立てて早くつけられるように
手にアルファがたくさんついてしまってべちゃべちゃになってしまって
一進一退がずっと続いていました。
先にケースに入れて真ん中刺してから足つけた方が楽だったかなって後から思い
Here she says that first I realized that first I need to do the body, and then I can add the other part. And this means that they have to come up with a system. They need to realize the system or determine the system first, and then they can proceed in this very limited time.
ました。
3、2、1。手を止めてください。
次のミッションはこちらです。
始めてください。
In their last mission, they are supposed to do a sushi out of just one rice particle or rice.
メスとピンセットになるとこういう風に難しいんだなっていうのを感じました。海苔が難しかったです。
終了1分前です。10秒前です。5、4、3、2、1。手を止めてください。
一見すると医療とは全然関係なさそうな試験だったんですけれども
Yeah, this is the essence of the video, I guess. He says that at first I couldn't be able to understand how this test can be related to medicine or surgery. And then I realized that they are testing our patients, they are testing our decision-making abilities, because as the surgeons, they need to deal with very small things like veins and nerves and tissues in a very stressful environment in operating rooms, and they need to finish everything in a very limited time, and they cannot be sure what they are going to see before they open the system, the body, so that they don't have time to think, they don't have time to prepare or organize their movements, their activities. They need to see it right at that time. They need to create their system. They need to decide how to proceed, and they need to do it. They need to apply it. And I think this is very similar with the architecture. Before you examine this profession, the profession of architecture, the doctrine of architecture, you may think that it is about shapes, it's about colors, it's about something else, but it is not. And maybe we can say that drawing ability, to have a nice sketching ability, skill, is it that important, or are there other things that has more importance?
What is architecture? It's more than just glass, steel, and concrete. Architecture is about solving problems and understanding the context of a puzzle beyond the defined borders of a site. It's the practice of delivering solutions that fit within the larger whole while creating greater meaning than the sum of the individual parts. Architecture is the living story of how society's values are reflected and affected by the built environment. It's the practice of giving birth to form and function from concept and purpose, giving shape to light and shadow, molding the earth, and casting permanence into existence in order to give purpose and meaning to space. Architecture is the story of civilization's past, present, and future, inspiring innovation, growing community, and improving the quality of life. So the question is, how are you contributing to that story? What inspires your vision? What challenges can you transform into opportunities? Who does your work serve? What do you dare to dream possible? The real question is, what's your story?
I think this is one of the best
What is
explanations about architecture. It says it's more than just glass, steel, and concrete. Architecture is about solving problems and understanding the context of a puzzle beyond the defined borders of a site. It is the practice of delivering solutions. That is what we are supposed to do. We need to create solutions for real problems of people, real problems of life. And these solutions should fit within the larger whole while creating greater meaning than the sum of the individual parts. We are going to make decisions. All these parts that we decide will have an effect, but the combination will cause the greater meaning, and it will be bigger than the sum of these individual parts. It is the living story of how society's values are reflected and affected by built environment. We can say that a totally different type of people, a very different society is living in these environments, and they created these environments. It is the practice of giving birth to form and function from concept and purpose. This here is the essence of this video, in my opinion. We are supposed to deliver our solutions in the form of a certain shape and function, and they will be originated from concept and purpose, so that we will be improving the quality of life. This is one of the last things that I want to share with you. Another very nice video about habits of successful architects. It's a video by 30x40 Design Workshop. You can follow them in YouTube. They have a very nice channel.
Every architect's design process is extremely personal and nuanced. For example, I have certain tools.
And this is another important part of this subject. Every architect's design journey is unique. We cannot say that this is true, this is wrong. But throughout this video, I wanted to share my ideas, my point of view, and I believe that these are the general things that can be shared among many architects. Of course, the journey is unique. Of course, the journey is different, but these are the common ways, or a common foundation.
Tools that I reach for ritually when I start a new project. One is a favorite lead pencil with a lightweight, medium-sized barrel and a thinly ridged grip, loaded with a medium-weight HB lead that's not too soft and not too hard. It has a broken clip at the top and a small blue button near my thumb to advance the lead. It's with this pencil in hand that I begin each design, visiting the project site, writing, taking notes, and sketching in a pocket-sized gridded sketchbook. It has to be this way for me, and I know that when I'm armed with these tools, the ideas will flow easily. While each architect's habits are individual and idiosyncratic, the broader architectural habits we share lay the foundations for good design. Here are 8 of the many habits that guide successful architects during the design process. Number 1, they tell a good story. Our memories of places are inherently linked to stories. A home that tells the story of a specific client in a specific place at a specific time enriches the experience and gives it a reason for being. Architects are taught very early in design school to conceptualize projects by inventing a narrative, which is traditionally called a partie. A partie is like a rule book in a way, and a good one allows us to refer back to it when we're stuck.
I think, I'm not sure 100%, but I think that the thing that he is calling a partie is the same notion that we call concept. This is what they call it.
Wondering what to do next. It organizes our thoughts and guides us in how best to relate the story through our design. Finding the bigger guiding idea and creating a story around it imbues every design decision with meaning. Number 2, they take risks. Taking risks to do something out of the ordinary is part of any creative field. Rethink, reimagine, retool, and invent new ways of doing the same old thing. This isn't to say that everything requires innovation or bold action, but looking at a problem through a different lens often reveals interesting solutions that don't rely on standard practice. Number 3, they sweat the details. At its heart, architecture seeks to solve problems, but it's the way we're able to solve those problems, the poetry we bring to the solution that separates the good from the bad. Details matter because they're often the things we're most engaged with on a daily basis. Number 4, they simplify. The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak, said painter Hans Hofmann. Number 5, they establish order. Designers prefer applying ordering principles to everything at every level. Naturally, the need for order requires hierarchy, which basically means you have to decide what's the most important thing and let the other things defer to it. Number 6, they repeat, repeat, repeat. Repetition in architecture is a good thing. Common thematic elements repeated again and again help to reinforce our previous habit of establishing order. Number 7, they break the rules. The prerequisite to this is the previous habit. Once we have an established repeating pattern, we can decide where to break the rules. Number 8, they engage the senses.
I cut the video to make it shorter, but I'm going to give the link so that you can watch it. I want to talk about certain things that he said in the video. At first, he said, good architects, they tell a good story. We can ask ourselves, what story and why do they tell this story? If you remember the TED Talk of Ole Sheeran, he was talking about a narrative structure. He was talking about reflecting a story, a fiction of people living in there, or of people who will live in there. And in that previous video, it says that architecture is how the values of societies are reflected and affected by the society or by the built environment. We can have, if you want to be good architects, then we can come up with this story, or we can try to reflect the story of people that will live in there, or we can tell the story of the data that we collected, or the story of our interpretation about this analysis. In the second step, he says they take risks. Again, we can ask ourselves what kind of risks and why do they take it? Is taking risks good? They take risks to do something out of the ordinary, but it is not their main goal here, to create something unusual, something different. It's not. They take this risk and they want to do something out of the ordinary in order to rethink, reimagine, retool, and invent new ways of doing the same old thing, to look at something through different lenses. This is one of my favorites. They simplify. It's the quote of painter Hans Hofmann. The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. if we want to come up with different ideas, if we want to catch a nice concept, we need to start taking risks, to start looking at the same thing through different lenses, so that we can find these ideas. Questioning is the main thing here.
Each little moment we've got.
Salonum! Koltukları takım aldık. Televizyona karşı sıraladık. Sehpayı tam ortaladık. Salonu misafirlere ayırdık.
Beyefendi böyle olmaz. Evinizi ezbere değil, keyfinize göre döşeyin. IKEA ile salonunuz aynı zamanda ufaklığın oyun alanı olsun. Herkes kendine yer bulsun. Koltuklar illa televizyona bakmasın. Tüm aile keyfine baksın. Tabii.
And once we find these ideas, we can try to express them. And how are we going to express them? Let's look at the meaning of express. It says here, it means to give or convey a true impression of something, showing, reflecting, or symbolizing. This is one of our main issues as the architects.
Communication is the encoding, transmission, and decoding of information. Breakthroughs in communication mark turning points in human culture.
We need to simplify it. We need to look at the same thing through different lenses and try to get the essence of it, the simplest way, in the simplest way. When I show you something like this, you can easily understand what it resembles. This is a very nice photo of one of our professors in school. Her daughter did this, and at first you cannot be able to understand what it is, but she, I think she was like 3 years old when she did this. She resembled her family, her father, mother, and maybe her siblings or other things. These are good examples of the expression of an idea, very clever examples. And here we see that they simplified as they express their ideas. But it's not just here. The history of Europe through 1,000 years, they are fighting a very clever idea, very simple, very minimalistic, very clever. And it goes like this. Here. Ottoman Empire, Byzantine Empire, Kingdom of Hungary, Republic of Venice, 1453. We can express it by using graphical expression methods, but through this expression journey, in order to find the best way to express this idea, we can also think to develop this idea. It is not just something that we can use to express ourselves, but to develop this idea, to look at this idea through different lenses. We can use these expression techniques to understand, to examine our thoughts by reflecting them on a piece of paper or on a digital environment or on a model, and so that we can examine these ideas and try to come up with different aspects or different solutions through this journey. Very simple, in very simple ways. This is a thinking process. The main thing is to keep up with the process, not try to find the answers, but try to look for good answers and try to create different alternatives. I don't know which project it belongs or who did these. I just find them in different pages, and when I see something like this, I realize that this is a thinking process of an architect. He or she, they are just trying to see the same thing in a different way and try to come up with the ideas, not just expressing them, but these graphical expressions, they serve for both developing the ideas and for expressing them to other people, representing the ideas. When I see something like this, it makes me think probably the architect here started to question the notion of a closed space. What happens if I turn it out? What happens if I try to do the opposite? We can use models to see our ideas on a solid form and question them further, so that we can find the proper ways to turn these ideas, turn the concept into living spaces. We can experiment how we can reflect these ideas into actual spaces. As you can see, Fujimoto, these are the works of Fujimoto, he is questioning the notion of the space organization, the space height. Probably, I'm not sure about this, but probably he did these models in order to reflect his idea into a solid form and try to turn it into living spaces. And this is one of his final results. And I think it is very, it's very important, very nice. And I know it's been quite a long, I think more than 1 hour, but I just want to give these examples from architecture. This is one of the architectural competitions for Denizli Municipality building, and this is the winner. It was back in 2009, and when we look their design, these are the architects. We see that it's a nice composition, but what is so important about this design? We can say that after reading their manifestation, after reading their text about the concept, we can understand that first they made a very nice analysis about the city, Denizli, and they found out that Denizli was famous for their clothes, how they view clothes, and they took this idea as their concept, and they created fabrics urban fabrics, and they kind of created this organization as a cloth, as a weaving, creating a cloth, and we can easily understand it by just looking at the side plan. They collected different pieces of greenery, water, hardwood floor or hard space, or hard covering materials, and it all continues on the facades of the building. Another example by Onur Salkan, it was again an architectural competition for Şişli High School. And when we look closely to the environment, it is this area, it's a triangular plot with a very high slope of roads here on the topography. And this is the previous building that used to be in this area, and the competitors, they wanted to demolish this building, and they are going to construct the winners project in there. And here we see that it is this area, this triangular area. It has a very high steep. There are two roads next to it. First one is this, and the second one is going upwards. There is a very high building, a skyscraper next to this area, and some apartment blocks around it. And here we see, if we have a section throughout this area, it's been organized like this. First, they constructed a retaining wall so that it holds the earth, and there is this level area, again another retaining wall, another planar area, and it goes like this. And this is where the actual high school building is situated on, and there is this area, open space area, that they can use as a parking space, and back in the background a place for students to play sports. And here in this other level there is a soccer field, and that's all. This is the actual site. This was the actual site, and this is an aerial view. This skyscraper, we see the roads, the triangular plot, high school building, the soccer field, the parking lot, and other buildings around it. And let's first examine the analysis Onur Salkan has made before he started the design process. First, he examined the building types and plot usage types around the area. Here we see Mecidiyeköy. This is one of the main roads, and this road here is the one connecting Mecidiyeköy to Taksim. Here where Beşiktaş is situated, and in his analysis, he found out that there are different types of buildings and plot styles around this area, around this project area. Like in the second zones, he realized that there are adjacent buildings with narrow plots, and only the front and the back facades of the buildings can open up to the air. And in the third zone, he found out that there are huge buildings, high skyscrapers with very large base footprints, and they are situated in a very large plots. Three different types of building. And now he zoomed out so that he can see a larger area. Again, we see here Mecidiyeköy with the main road, and this road that connects Taksim and Mecidiyeköy. Here is Şişli, and here is Beşiktaş. And he made another type of analysis. This time he looked for open spaces and how they are being used. I will just get a little closer, and he gave a key like this. This is where this triangular plot area is situated, the design area is situated, and he found out there are three open space meeting areas. One is the garden of Shishli Mosque, the open area of Jawahir Mall, and Mecidiyeköy Square. After that, he realized that there are green spaces, but they cannot be used as a parking area or a recreational area because they are graveyards. Two green spaces, one is for Jewish people, the other is for Catholic Christians, and he said that these are passivated green spaces that cannot be used by locals here. And after that, he realized that there are active green spaces, park areas, which can be used for recreational purposes. And he measured the distance of all these areas, the open space meeting areas, and recreational areas, to the how far they are located to the project site. And he says that there is a very dense population with lots of buildings around the project area, but there are no meeting areas or open space usage areas or recreational areas nearby. So he decided that the most important thing his design should be based on is to create a nice green area that can be used by the locals. And he says that you know, the competition jury, they gave a certain list of spaces for the competitors so that they can place all these spaces in their design, such as 20-something classrooms for this much students, a sports hall, a closed sports hall, a library, an audiovisual saloon, or meeting rooms for teachers, the principal's office, spaces like that, a huge list. And he says that if I am to locate all these spaces, then it will be a huge building like this, and it will there won't be any open space areas. And he came up with this idea. What happens if I just buried all the spaces underground, so that I can, and it's a very nice way to express this idea, so that I can have a very large recreational area that can be used by the locals. And this is how he constructed his design. He placed all the classrooms, all the meeting areas, all the principal offices or teachers' lounges, and all other indoor spaces underground, so that he can have a nice park area, recreational area, for people to use. But this was so bold, in my opinion, because you need to have a natural light and natural air for your spaces, indoor spaces. So he created these huge courtyard areas, and this was the final image of his design. You see 4 deep courtyards that provides natural light and air for the indoor spaces, and nothing else, just a recreation area for local people and everyone else. And another very clever idea that he get, in my opinion, is to locate auditorium, audiovisual meeting room, seminar room here, library here, and sports hall here. And he says that all these spaces can be used by students and high school during the weekdays, and the borders of the high school can be like this when the education is on, and local people can use only the roof. They cannot enter this library or sports hall or the audiovisual saloon. But during the night time and the weekends, the borders can be redesigned like this. The borders of the high school can be redesigned like this, and these areas can open up to the local people. They can use the auditorium, they can use the library, they can use the sports hall, but they cannot pass these borders to the classrooms. And this was a very clever, very nice idea. So we can easily say that if we come up with good ideas as our concept, those ideas can guide us throughout our journey, and at the end we can create a very functional and experiential or aesthetical, we can say, building with a very different solutions. And all these ideas, they came from our analysis. This is what Onur Sakan did. He analyzed the area, he analyzed the context, he analyzed the content, and he started to interpret all the collected data through different point of views so that he can come up with the ideas. And he used this method of graphical representation in order to develop his ideas, in order to question his ideas and try to create alternatives in order to see if his ideas are valuable or meaningful. And it is a very nice way to work in a three-dimensional environment that holds all of your analyses, all of your analyzed values, like the views here, or the functions of your neighboring buildings. Everything that you collected from literature or from your on-site observations, you can combine all of them on a 3D environment. It can be a digital modeling or an actual model. You can put all these informations, your analysis about the traffic network, transportation network, the positions of the bus stops or sea travel, how people can approach here, the walkways, the car parking areas, the position of the sun, the position of the prevailing wind throughout the year, not just one time, but throughout the year. The sources of noise, the greenery, water, anything that you collected about the natural environment, the built environment, and the social environment in that space. And after you do this, you have a nice base that you can work on. You can start to think, you can start to observe or examine the situation in different ways. And I advise you to work in a 3D environment with all these information collected. You need to see them throughout your design process. And after that, we need to combine these data with the analysis of our user, and particularly their requirements, their needs. They will have certain needs originated from their biological properties, psychological properties, and sociological properties. So we can start to come up with different ideas. So that we can create our design. And some of these ideas, some of these decisions will help us to create a functional building. Some of them will be for aesthetical properties. And we can start by deciding about user activities. We can try to answer this question. The building that we are going to design, or let's say the living spaces that we are going to design, which users or user groups will do what kind of activities. And we can have a list of activities, and by looking at this list, by examining this list, we can try to decide that in which spaces these activities can be located in our future building. So we can have a list of spaces that can be open spaces, semi-open spaces, or closed spaces. And we can decide about the relationship of these spaces to each other. And how can we do these decisions? We can use the data that we collected about our user. There are examples that we found about the function and any other stuff. And once we decided the list of the spaces and the user activities, now we can concentrate on how we can approach to our plot area. But there can be different people, different vehicles, so that we can decide for different approach directions. How can the owner of this building can approach to this area? How can other users or user groups can approach? How can the garbage can leave this area? At what direction? Which direction? And we can draw these directions, and we can come up with good decisions by looking at the street properties, street width, the topography, the transportation network, greenery, views, viewing angles. Also, by looking at our scenario, the properties of our user, the examples that we found about the function. Once we decided about these directions, now we can think about where can we locate our closed spaces and open spaces. We can say that one of my closed spaces can be located in here. And this is not to indicate the form, but the location. And some part of that they can be located here, so that I can have an open space in between. Or I can go towards a different direction and decide that my closed spaces can be located here, so that I can have a backyard like that. And to which this data can we look in order to give or make meaningful decisions? We need to look at the neighboring buildings, the built environment. We can examine our concept in this way. We need to check the topography, the position of the sun rays, sun path, I mean, the prevailing wind, greenery, views, and our former decision about the approach to the plot. And in this step, we can decide how we can enter to these closed and open spaces. Where can be the main entrances are. Again, we need to check all these data, our former decisions, and topography, and our concept, and other things. Once we decide, once we completed all these decisions, we can move on to decide the locations of our space list, and how can we place all of our closed, semi-closed, and open spaces. This was one of our former steps. By using the activities of users, we created the list of spaces, like an entrance hall, 2 bathrooms, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, one living room. Now we need to try to find the best place for all these spaces. And we can say that let's place the entrance room here because we want it to be close to the main approach of people. And we can place our living area up here because there is a very nice view if you go higher. And they can be connected like this through a vertical circulation solution, maybe a staircase or an elevator or a ramp or something else. And I want the kitchen to be located in here because of the needs or the users that are going to use this kitchen. It needs to be closer to here. It needs ventilation or something like this, and these spaces can be connected like that. And this room can be located here because it doesn't need any light, or it needs to be hidden or something else. And we can create all different alternatives for the best location of our spaces. And if we do right choices, if we decide, if we make good decisions, then we can say that all these spaces will be very functional. They will get all the air they need. They can use the sun's lighting properties and heating properties. They will provide the necessary sound level for their user and all other requirements. And we must link of all our decisions together. It's a step-by-step process. First, we decide something, and then we move on to our further decisions, our other decisions based on our previous decisions. And we can use our concept. We need to consider the requirements of our users, and we need to combine all these with the environmental properties. And again, we can make these graphical representations to think and to express our ideas. We can use a three-dimensional modeling base. This can be a digital model or an actual model, and we can sketch in order to see if our ideas are good or not. But it is very important to work in a 3D environment with all the environmental data on it. As you can see here, it's a process. It's a step-by-step process. In each step, you combine different data and try to come up with a solution, a decision. And if you do it like this, at the end, you will get a form. You will decide the positions of the spaces. You will decide about the form, the colors, the texture, the transparency, and everything. And if someone asks you, why did you decide? Why did you wanted this form? Why did you do a building like this? You will have lots of meaningful answers to give to them. You can be able to explain the reasons of your decisions by combining them with the data of the context and the content, and of course your concept. Here we see the same thing. They are trying to make decisions according to the environmental values, properties, and the requirements of users. But it's not just something like an engineering solution. They also have a certain concept. And from now on, when you are making a presentation in our studios, I want you to use a SketchUp model or a picture of your actual model with your plot area centered that has all the environmental values, all the environmental properties you collected. And I want you to create a slide organization like this. You need to show the existing building, the photo of the existing building in different angles all around your plot area. And I want you to find the municipality info so that we can be sure that it's a building that we can demolish easily. It's nothing that we have to protect. It's not a cultural heritage or a public building, an important building. And I want you to give these street views. Imagine that you make a section throughout this street and you are looking at this direction. We need to see your neighboring buildings, and your plot area is obviously empty from now on. And this will be the base that you are going to use to make your design from now on. You need to work in this base all the time. You shouldn't make any decisions without the environmental information, without the nearby surrounding situation.